That's English.
Sí, inglés, lo hablo muy bien, muy perfectamente. Usted no me tiene que decir con rebolico ese que no lo hablo bien.
How dare you say that to me?
What did I say?
I don't know, but how dare you?
Hey!
Oh, buenos dias.
What are you doing in here?
Who, me?
Yeah, you. You see somebody else in the garage?
Garage. Looks to me like un basurero.
What's that supposed to mean?
Basurero, it means junkyard.
Get out of here and take your flies with you.
What flies?
Your flies. You people got flies all around you. And while you're standing here, your flies are getting together with my flies and making more flies.
Men from Miami, you play this game well.
Nosotros jugamos como tú.
I don't like you.
We didn't come here to make friends.
Well, at least I'm not the guy who has magic underwear to help the Raiders win.
Hey, I know my underwear don't have any magic powers. Not since someone bleached the magic right out of them. Spring freshness. Está loca, spring freshness.
Wednesday is technically a Latina character, and that's never been represented. So for me, anytime that I have an opportunity to represent my community, I want that to be seen.
Who doesn't have a spooky built-in altar in their family library?
Ours is in the living room. More seating for a year-long Dia de los Muertos.
If you grew up in America in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or most of the 80s, there were only 3 major television networks during that period broadcasting comedies and dramas. Home video recording wasn't available until the latter part of that era, so we had what was known as appointment television. The entire nation tuned in at the same time to watch their favorite TV shows. If you're Latino like me, you look for characters who looked and sounded like you, someone you could relate to. By the way, if you're wondering which is the preferred term, Hispanic or Latino, Latina, they are pretty much interchangeable, so I'll be using them liberally in this presentation. Latinx is a still term that's up for debate, even amongst ourselves, but we are not all Mexican. That's a topic for another study. Now getting back to television, finding brown faces among the sea of whiteness in the golden age of TV was a hard task. Ricky Ricardo, played by I Love Lucy executive producer Desi Arnaz, was the first Latino to break the racial barrier as a featured character. Latinos love hearing his Cuban rants as well as his Latin music. The rest of America laughed at him too. We just didn't realize they were laughing at us instead of with us. Now that distinction became clearer in the 70s when Hispanic characters on TV appeared more as comedic foils instead of serious characters. Freddie Prinze's Chico from Chico and the Man did help break down some racial barriers, as Jack Albertson's gruff character of the Man grew to appreciate his Puerto Rican employee and friend as the show went on. However, much of the audience probably overlooked that growth, instead remembering the stereotypes and jokes made at Chico's expense. The 80s saw a dramatic shift in negative stereotypes. Miami Vice fed the image of Latin American drug lords and criminals. Hispanic characters largely faded into the background, seen mainly as criminals, maids, or the dim-witted neighbor with a funny accent. It wasn't until about the early 2000s that George Lopez created an everyday family dealing with everyday issues who happened to speak Spanish. If you're brown like me, you laughed at the inside language and the cultural jokes. If you're not, you probably laughed just because it was funny. Now slowly, shows started adding Hispanic characters to feature parts. And even more importantly, Latino actors began to be showcased in TV series in roles that had nothing to do with their ethnicity. Pedro Pascual was the lead actor in 2 recent major series, The Mandalorian and The Last of Us, neither of which focus on his Spanish speaking or the color of his skin. And in the last clip we saw, Jenna Ortega plays America's favorite daughter of darkness, Wednesday, and acknowledges her Hispanic roots, but not overtly. It was good to see Luis Guzman playing her father, Gomez Adams, leaving no question that he is Latino. Now, those positive Hispanic role models are few and far between. Instead, negative stereotypes of Latinos portrayed on TV have left a lasting impression on white viewers, and that impression is often not a good one. In their study, Exposure to Television Portrayals of Latinos, The Implications of Aversive Racism and Social Identity, researchers Dana E. Mastro and Elizabeth Ben Morowitz and Maria Copaz set out to examine what impact these negative Latino stereotypes depicted on television might have on white viewers. Now, to begin with, their 2008 study notes that according to the 2000 census, Latinos comprised 12% of the nation's population, yet they only made up 4% of the characters featured on primetime television. On a side note, UCLA's 2020 Hollywood Diversity Report puts those numbers as 18% of the population, but still only around 5% of the broadcast roles. Now, according to our research team, of those characters depicted, only 11% are portrayed as having high-status jobs. The rest are most likely to be cast in service roles like nannies, waiters, and gardeners. Sadly, among the negative traits commonly associated with Hispanics on TV is that they lack intelligence or education. And of course, many are either shown as criminals or victims of crime. So what does this mean in real life? We all know that TV shows are make-believe, right? It's not the real world, right? Well, our team admits that there was very little empirical research for them to examine regarding the influence of these negative Latino portrayals on consumers. But in other research areas, there is indication that these media-fueled stereotypes can lead to negative judgments about Latinos in real life, such as affecting an imbalance in prison sentences between minority and white offenders, race-related governmental policies, and outright hostility for minority groups. In our current heated political climate, we are bombarded daily with the scare tactic stories of immigrants invading the U.S., unleashing murderers and drug dealers into our suburbs. While you can call it racism, it isn't as overt as the hate we've seen in the past. In fact, our researchers examined this issue using the aversive racism paradigm and social identity theory. The aversive racism theory says that instead of outwardly discriminating against minorities, these negative views are more subtle. In fact, it can manifest itself more as increased self-esteem for whites instead of the obvious derision about minorities. To put it bluntly, if most Latinos are depicted as dim-witted lowlifes with an accent, I can feel superior about myself and my white friends. Now, the social identity theory isn't something limited to whites. It affects all groups. Essentially, we all identify as us and them. Too often, the mindset is us versus them. And sadly, there's not enough of the we mentality. Mastro, Ben, Morowitz, and Copaz theorized that a character's ethnicity and how that character is portrayed can predict a viewer's response to that portrayal. They speculated that if television portrayals are ambiguous, meaning you're not sure if the character is white, Latino, black, or something else, then the white viewers will likely assume the positive character is white, while the negative character is from a different background, or in this case, Latino. However, if you flip the roles, with the positive character being Latino, white viewers are more likely to be left with a positive impression. Now, to test these theories on how negative Latino portrayals can influence white viewers, they developed these two hypotheses. H1, a three-way interaction will emerge between viewers' racial identification, character race, and television storyline in predicting evaluations of television characters' qualifications and adherence to stereotypes. Specifically, the viewer's own level of racial identification will moderate the two-way interaction between character, race, and television storyline. In other words, the viewer's racial identification of the character will influence their evaluation of that character. H2 predicted that viewers exposed to ambiguous outgroups, in this case Latinos, depictions on television, that they will report higher self-esteem than those exposed to ambiguous portrayals of the in-group or the white person on television, increasingly so as racial identification rises. So in this case, the expectation was that if the same negative traits are depicted by both white and Latino characters, the viewer will likely feel higher self-esteem when the Latino is shown in the negative light. I want you to meet two fictional characters. This is Juan Rodriguez, a late teen skater dude, and this is his buddy John Rogers, another teen skateboarder. Now, these aren't the actual photos used in the study, but headshots like these were attached to a script that 249 undergrad students were told was for a show being considered for a network production. While they weren't told the character's background, Juan Rodriguez was identified as Latino by all the respondents in one test. John Rogers was identified as white by 85% of them. Now, in the script, the character was depicted as a lazy slacker student. After reading the scripts, the study participants were asked to fill out a survey. It included questions like, how confident are you that Juan graduated from high school? And how confident are you that Juan or John dropped out of high school? Also, is it clear that Juan John has the training to succeed in high school? And Juan John has the necessary preparation to make it through high school? As predicted, the survey showed that John has a bright future ahead of him, Juan not so much, even though they were the exact same characters. In the second study, the participants were shown a video with the character portrayals, but this time they were good students, not slackers. Again, the results showed viewers thought John was most likely to succeed in school than Juan, even though they were the same character in the same situation. Does this prove that negative Latino stereotypes lead to aversive racism? Not really, but it does show that there is a correlation that needs to be explored further. What it does give us is an empirical test as a foundation to study this question. There have been similar studies examining subtle bias by whites against blacks, but this is one of the first looking at Latinos in particular. It would be interesting to see how this is taken to the next level. In fact, one of the other studies I'm exploring looks at how interpersonal interactions between whites and Latinos can counteract those stereotypes to a degree. Now, until more studies are done, Hispanics need to push forward, striving for more positive roles in TV and film. When I was a television reporter in the 80s, I had the opportunity to interview Antonio Aguilar, famous in Mexico for his mariachi movies. I asked him about his role as General Rojas in the Hollywood film The Undefeated, starring John Wayne and Rock Hudson. I asked him about the fact that his costume was that of a properly uniformed officer, not a bandito. He said that John Wayne actually wanted him in the stereotypical Mexican rebel outfit, wearing a sombrero and a bandolier. But he told the Duke that it was not the uniform that this type of officer would wear, and if he was going to do the role, he would do it properly. As you can see, Antonio won out. Now, if you're not brown like me, these little details may seem irrelevant. But if you are, they make a big difference. Because you see, they aren't just portraying a character. That's me up on that screen and people like me. And hopefully, you'll see more of us in positive roles coming soon to a TV screen near you. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching and thanks for your time.